Hello, everyone, and welcome to this exciting panel discussion on the topic, Future of Work, It is Happening Now. The unprecedented outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic entirely transformed the conventional work paradigm. Businesses all over the world have a once-in-a-lifetime possibility to rethink the workplaces, workflows, management, and employee strategies. It is imperative for the organizations to think that large-scale transitions are happening in the workplace that are significant for attaining success in the future of work. Some of the major trends catalyzed by the pandemic are increase in hybrid and remote working, organizational redesign for resilience, increased use of data analytics and collection, enhanced focus on continuous learning and development, focus on the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and financial health of employees, customized performance monitoring instead of employee monitoring, and many more. In this panel discussion today, we will discuss why businesses must start building their future workplaces today, since in these uncertain times, organizational growth only depends upon productivity and resilience. And it is my pleasure to invite our esteemed panelists for this session today. First up, we have Alvin Goh, Executive Director at Singapore Human Resources Institute, Singapore. Alvin is an accomplished international senior business manager with over 20 years of experience in the financial and consulting industry, where he played key roles in various business and human capital transformation projects that have translated to net bottom line growth of $100 million. He spent the last 7 years in a regional bank covering 15 cities as the head of human capital and head of CEO office. Highly adept at corporate transformation, human capital management, and business growth, Alvin enjoys the challenges of solving complex business issues. His practical competencies and influential people skills have been well evidenced in various M&A, transformational, and corporate development projects that he has personally undertaken. And more recently, he provided end-to-end leadership in a business transformation and created a new operating model that resulted in immense improvement in employee satisfaction and top-line business growth. Next up, we have Angelina Chua, Vice President, Special Grade Group Human Resource at ComfortDelGro, Singapore. A strong advocate of talent development, Angelina believes in the immense positive contributions people can bring to an organization when cared for and constantly engaged. From talent mining to retention and development, a well-thought-out talent strategy has first and foremost the well-being of its people at the center of the universe, and the execution surrounds it. When a leader truly cares for its people's developments, authentic leadership is present and appreciated, thus bringing out people's best strengths and talents stay motivated. We also have joining us today, Ming Teck Kong, Managing Director and Partner at Boston Consulting Group, Singapore. Ming Teck is the Managing Director and Partner at BCG Singapore office with over 20 years of experience in research, industry, and consulting in Europe and Asia. He leads BCG's people and organization practice in ASEAN, where he works with clients on organization effectiveness and operating models, people strategy and culture, purpose and change management. He's worked with clients across a range of industries on these topics, frequently in the context of transformations and major transactions. We also have joining us today, Wing Git Chan, Group Head Talent and Excitement at Luxasia, Singapore. At Luxasia, an omni-channel leader in luxury, beauty, and lifestyle, Chang Wing looks after the entire HR function across its 15 markets. He brings a wealth of HR experience, having previously held the position of SVP, Group HR, Admin, and Training at Bread Talk Group, where he had group-wide responsibilities supporting a 7,000-strong workforce across 3 business divisions. And last but not the least, this session will be moderated by Juancho Jerusalem, Vice President and Head of APJ Expansion at Darwinbox, Singapore. A leader passionate about people, pipeline, process, and performance, Juancho comes with 20 plus years of extensive cross-border management experience across the APAC region. He is an ex-regional VP at Salesforce for the Marketing Cloud business and ex-regional director for Oracle's applications business and later on customer experience business. Throughout his career, he has handled roles of varying complexity and difficulty at MNCs, including Citrix. Juancho takes pride in working with different organizations from startups to large enterprises. His belief that technology is the best medium for change and HR tech should not be hard to use, particularly in a work from anywhere world, is what drives him to enable HR transformation. And at Darwinbox, he spearheads customer success across the company's base of HRMS users, growth and expansion across APJ, and culture creation for attracting best talent and partners. So thank you so much to all our speakers for joining us today. I'm sure our audience will learn a lot from the insights you would share. And now, without any further delay, let me invite Juancho to take over and start this exciting discussion. So over to Juancho.
Thank you very much, Yasmin. It's a privilege to be around people with such great and vast experience across the people business. So I think Alvin is lucky first. So my first question goes to Alvin. Hey Alvin, hope you're doing well. My question to you is really with regards to your on-ground lessons from HR transformations. And when you say HR transformations, this would be around maybe common pitfalls and best practices. So I wanted to ask, what underground lessons from HR transformations, as mentioned, have you gathered from working with organizations across Southeast Asia and APAC as a whole?
Right. So thanks for inviting me and SHRI to this wonderful platform, and it's always good to be among HR thought leaders itself. So I think where I'm going to come from to really start off this conversation is that transformation and disruption has been ongoing for the last 5 to 7 years, and to be very frank and honest, it's really picked up a lot of pace from second gear to fifth gear over the last 21 months. And what we are really seeing in today's marketplace around the region is number one, of course, the job redesigning things that really come to mind, right? In terms of using digitalization, using big data, using modeling analytics to really put forth progressive people practices in our workplaces. We can't run away from upskilling and reskilling the workforce because, as I said, 2020 is not just about COVID-19 itself. 2020 is also the new decade that we are going to see the digital nomads that's going to come up into the workforce here in Southeast Asia. All right. And I describe the digital nomads as growing up, all right, with milk bottle in one hand and smart device in one hand. And this is going to be the future workforce, right? And organizations itself must disrupt and transform themselves to cater to this incoming workforce itself of the future. But yet we also can't run away from the fact that here in ASEAN and Southeast Asia itself, we also have, to some extent, a growing population, all right? And thus organizations, what we are seeing is that they're also thinking about multi-generation workforce, for that matter. And perhaps maybe closer to home here in Singapore, it's something that organizations and the government is to some extent very worried, all right? How do business pivot to create what I call work-friendly workplaces to cater to this multi-generation workforce? All right. And I think, coming back to your question about pitfalls itself and everything is that there's to some extent, a misunderstanding, all right, out in the SME world to some extent that, when we talk about big data, when we talk about analytics, we talk about modeling and stuff like that, they always think that these are always reserved for big multinational corporations with large investment pockets, right? Large financial powers to actually do it. But in actual fact, as I said, we move from second gear to fifth gear, and the cost of implementing, right, vis-a-vis compared to the cost of not implementing is going to be much more detrimental for organizations who do not disrupt themselves now. Because in many of my conversations with various HR leaders itself, it's better to disrupt yourself and get being disrupted, by others themselves. And as I said, it's almost a perfect storm that COVID has brought about. Because right now we really need to look into the future workforce, the future workplace, and as well the use of technology in our organizations itself. So I think it's like a perfect storm for us to really disrupt ourselves so that we pivot ourselves to become more progressive, forward-looking, and cater to the changing habits of our consumers, and as well also for the future generations of our talent that's coming out. So I think this is what I'm seeing, all right, in Southeast Asia and closer to home here in Singapore.
Thank you, Alvin. Very, very insightful answers. And I actually co-chaired a roundtable discussion a few days ago, and we had an IT and HR audience, and I think you brought a good talk about the criticality of tech, right? And I think the silo between HR and tech is now unavoidable. You know, we've got to work together so that we can go forward and really serve obviously the best people, the best resource in business, which is our people, right? So I'd like to go now to Ming Teck. Ming Teck, my question to you is, you've got a very long experience in Boston consulting, and I'd like to sort of pick your brains and find out, from your perspective, which key areas of focus with respect to HR tech are emerging in the new world of work that you see?
Yeah, so HR tech is a very, I guess, dynamic and broad topic. I will start by area focus and rolling it out with a clear objective to have, from an HR perspective, a much more strategic customer or person, individual orientated HR experience. And that's the case for a shift towards what we in BCG call a bionic or a tech-enabled or a tech-strengthened HR function. And clearly, in such a system, you will find that transactional, operational aspects of HR are reduced significantly by the HR tech. You see a lot more automated processes, a lot more self-service, and HR actually going back really to its core, which is to take a very strategic view of human resources within a company. Now, but to your specific question of HR tech. Now, HR tech, different layers, and the way that I like to really look at it is not so much at the fundamental IT level, different databases and the like, and the HR data and the reporting and stuff, but actually, what is the kind of HR experience that is being used? Now, I think that the first thing that people should really be focusing on is recruiting on the one hand and engagement on the other. So we take a life cycle. There's admin that we've got recruiting and onboarding, performance and talent management, learning and engagement, together with succession planning. And I think coming out of the pandemic, engagement is really key. People have had a tremendous amount of time to reflect on what they want, and the tech needs to actually support that. So be it increasing use of HR tech around engagement, or increased use of HR tech to manage your external workforce, because we have moved to new ways of kind of working, we need to actually invest in that. Now, the second area that I think is quite important for HR tech is actually what we're doing with recruiting and onboarding. I mean, we've all heard of this trend in some developed markets of the so-called great resignation. People just saying, I'm leaving. Now, what that means, and actually that, those trends, we see them also in this part of the world. What that means is that actually re-recruiting people is super important. So, the tech that you have around perhaps AI-based video interviews, chatbots that you have for people finding out about the company and processes, that type of kind of technology applications will be important to actually accelerate recruiting processes driven by what the business needs are. So just to sum, I think kind of the digitization of HR definitely need to go full on board. And if there were areas of accenting coming out of the pandemic, engagement and recruiting, for at least from my perspective, in terms of what is needed by business today.
No, thank you. That's a great point. And I think Ming Teck, I myself am part of the Great Resignation. I actually moved roles or moved companies over the past 4 months, and it's funny. I moved companies, but my office didn't change. You don't go to offices anymore, right? You're just in your home office. So Yeah, this question goes to Angelina. Angelina, I'm very curious in Delgro, from a blue collar workforce point of view, how does digitalization of HR play out at ComfortDelGro that has a total fleet size of, I think, close to 47,000 buses, taxis, and rental vehicles? So if you could share your point of view, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it's something that is really very key to us because the majority of workforce would fall under the blue-collar category. I guess what's important is the investment that we are putting in to the people development side of things. We do have an e-learning system being put in place. And this e-learning system comprises of quite a number of modules. And that is really to enable learning for our people in the hybrid work environment now, because you can't really, even if you want to, kind of like conduct face-to-face training, you can't always do that. There's always, restriction, and we have heightened alert. We're moving in and out of the different phases. Therefore, I think what we have done is to put this learning available via e-platform, and that is really to help our people to still continue to learn new things as we go along. So I guess that's one area where I think in HR there are many areas that we can look at digitalization, but I think for us really the focus right now and something that we have been doing is on the learning front.
Thank you for the feedback. So I appreciate that. So my next question is to Wing Git. Wing Git, first I would like to congratulate you because I think Luxasia was recognized by Deloitte as Singapore's best management company. I'm very familiar with Luxasia. I used to work with your CMO back in the day when I was at Salesforce. So yeah, but the question, Wing Git, is how do you manage the whole gamut of employee experience? And when I say employee experience, this is all about performance management, and engagement and rewards and recognition for your workforce, especially as the pandemic has really pushed the digital agenda much further.
I think that's a very good question, and maybe to start off, perhaps it's worthwhile to revisit, I think, almost 18 months ago at the start of the pandemic, when it first happened and it first hit. And back then, when you talk about employee experience, the focus was very different, right? I think traditionally, when you talk about employee experience, it's about how to make people feel engaged, how to motivate them, etc. But back then, I think at the very start, there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of uncertainty. I think there was a lot of expectation for HR to hold everything together and make sure that business goes on. So I think we recognize that at the very start. And you also recognize that I think to be able to do that, communication is key. So there's a need to quickly communicate to our employees to assure them that we'll do whatever it takes to keep them safe in a time of pandemic. The other is, of course, to assure them of their job security, etc., so that they can continue to do their job. And to be able to do that, I think a lot hinges on a few things. I think first of all, the caliber of the leadership team, that is very important. But I think the other is the tool that is available. What are we able to do to be able to communicate to people in a very remote environment, and to do so in a very quickly, right, to reach down to every single staff in all our markets. And on that basis, actually, we quickly invested and we brought everybody on board a Facebook Workplace platform so that we are able to, I think, communicate, hold regular town halls to keep everyone updated as to what's the situation like and what are some of the stuff that we are putting in place. And if you recall, the pandemic as it evolved, I think the rules keep changing, etc. There were a lot of uncertainty, and it was all the more important for us to emphasize, I think, this point about how we are trying our very best, level best, to keep the business going, and also at the same time ensure that everybody is assured of a job as well as their personal safety during the time of pandemic. And after that, I think when things stabilize a bit more, we start to look at performance management, right, in a remote environment. How do we make sure that people working at home, they are aware of what are the new targets because the economic environment kept evolving and keep changing. Right, business targets, we are adjusting our targets almost on a one-on-one basis. Yeah, so it was very important, I think, for the business leader, for everyone to be very clued in as to how the whole group was performing and what are the areas that we needed to change and to adjust. And again, I have to emphasize, communication becomes very important, right? How do we meet regularly to make sure that the expectations that are changing are communicated, cascaded, and well understood by everybody. And that everybody is on top of things. They know that this is the new direction that we are heading towards. Where are the parts that we are restructuring? In the midst of the pandemic, we had to pivot a lot to e-commerce. And we had to ensure that everybody was on board on that. And that requires, I think, everybody playing a part on managing their respective teams, being in very close touch, understanding where their roles are in all this. And actually, through it all, we realized that to manage an organization with operations in many different markets, and especially so in a remote environment, a pandemic environment, it is all the more important to have a very clear sense of purpose, right, and objective. So then we took the chance to also revisit, like, what does Luxasia stand for? What is it that we exist? Why is it that we exist? And we wanted to be sure that everybody is clear on what are the core values of Luxasia. So we took the chance, actually towards the end of last year, we crystallized, we did a series of focus group, and we came out with a new vision statement. And we did a refresh of our core values to emphasize that Luxasia, we are not just another distributor company. We are all about delighting our customers, about driving brands and developing and talents. And we made sure that every single Luxasian is aware of all this. So that's, I think, even though we may be working apart in very remote, different environment, we are all clear on what is important to us. Yeah, I think that essentially sums up, I think, our experience in the past 1.5 years.
Thank you, Wing Git. I think it really resonates to me personally. You know, like, we all know that if your employees are really engaged, then that means that they feel safe and they feel taken care for. And when you've got a happy place, then that's the time where you can give better customer experience as well, right? So no, that's very true. So thank you for that response. It's very insightful. I want to go back to Angelina. Angelina, I want to talk about data now, right? So and how important data is, you know, be it security, be it data analytics. What's, from your perspective, what's the importance of data for HR that's non-negotiable, right? So I know I spoke earlier about HR and IT needing to work together. So to kind of simplify the question, I wanted to ask, what are the non-negotiables for HR from a data and IT standpoint resonates to you as companies normalize hybrid working?
Okay, sure. I think this is quite a big topic, but how I'll break it down is that a data breach will be very costly to an organization. And we want to position our employees as kind of like the first line of the defense. So having a strong employee workforce that is, you know, really well versed with cyber securities and, you know, some of the pitfalls, that will be important. So therefore, I think from a HR standpoint, besides, you know, really putting in place a measure for the organization and working alongside with IT, the next important thing that we probably want to work on is really having a platform to engage our employees and also to really let them know, educate them, and tell them what are some of the things that they can look out for, because there are also a lot of technical terms involved, like, you know, what is a malware. So these are some of things that could be quite basic to the IT professionals and for people who are more well-versed on the IT front. But what we do is to make sure that all these terms and you know, what does phishing mean? You know, how are we, you know, being susceptible in a way in our daily, you know, work with IT and all that. So I think putting in place really a learning program that is very core, and that's what we have done, is to put people through a compulsory 4-module core learning, And this learning, starting with the first module, is really about cybersecurity. Before we move to stuff that are like end user computing, which is more kind of like basic. And we also educate them about digital technologies and data analytics. So I guess kind of like the way that we design is if all these will go hand in hand, and hopefully, we are able to provide that learning platform for employees to be our first line of defense.
Yeah, that's great, right? If you think about it, employees first line of defense, I think this is a term that's been unheard of before the pandemic, right? And I think security, compliance, it really resonates, right? Me personally, a few months back, I was a victim of a phishing exercise via WhatsApp. So security to me is very important. So thanks again for the feedback there, Angelina. I want to go back to Alvin. Alvin, so this is about the role of the CHRO, Chief HR Officer, and how it's evolving in decision making and future proofing, right? So I wanted to find out how, from your perspective, how's that impacting IT and HR?
Right. So I think from an IT perspective, information technology development is definitely an important activity in the innovation process, right? As I shared earlier on, organizations are looking and should disrupt themselves and adopt an innovation process within their businesses. And this definitely will require talent who possess this knowledge to know how to use it and to know how to apply it. And CHROs are in that conversation with the business leaders in terms of looking at innovation processes and so forth. Even closer to the HR world itself, previously in my role as a CHRO, and perhaps maybe Angelina could also attest to that, it's no more about finding a HR officer or recruiting a HR officer and just saying that, I've got a passion to want to work with people and therefore I've chosen HR as my field. All right, that will not put you through the door anymore. All right. The narrative that we are having today, CHROs and business leaders, is that what are the forward-looking, future-oriented skill sets that HR people must and should have? And we're talking about ability to use things like predictive analytics, to be able to be comfortable with usage of numbers. We do not want to do HR for the sake of doing HR anymore, right? It must be progressive to help our businesses compete in the marketplace. If our business leaders cannot compete in the marketplace, there is simply no workplace for us to manage. Let's face it, that's the honest truth, right? Okay, that's the other one. And I think the narrative about conversations between an organization that is a brick and mortar organization vis-a-vis comparing to an organization that is tech-driven, that conversation at the management meeting is very, very different. All right. So I think that's the key thing. And the skill sets that we are looking at are executives or managers who have computational analysis, cross-computational analysis and thinking, cross-cultural sensitivity, understanding the spirits of various employment laws, and not just the employment laws itself, because at a higher level playing field, as we go towards the future of the workforce, whereby we are looking at offshoring and nearshoring, it's not just about application of acts and laws, it's about understanding the spirits of it, right? And how then can we adopt and bring in gig workers and bring in offshore workers and so forth into the organization to help contribute. And that also raises up a lot of different topics in the world of rewards, right? Gone are the days there where we are just looking at job evaluation and salary structures. And I think the whole concept of progressive people practices across the employee life cycle needs to change, and HR is in a great position right now to really disrupt ourselves. And I think that's where the conversations are taking place and should even take place, in my honest opinion.
Thank you. Great insights. I've never used the word spirit in the context of HR, and I think you've used that like 3 or 4 times. So, but yeah, it's great. It's great insights, and it's really true that you should have a good understanding, and your term spirits and my term like really the varying cultures of different people, so that you can push for a common goal. So I'm gonna ask my last question. I really wanted to go on, but I think I'm limited with with obviously a specific time. My last question goes to Wing Git and Ming Teck. And this is a bit really futuristic, right? So if you had to crystal gaze the new world of work, what does the future look like for HR tech? So I'll start first with Wing Git.
Okay. I think that's a very it opens up a world of possibilities, right? The time that we are in and the digital capabilities that's on the market. But I think the last couple of months we have seen how maybe I'll touch on two parts. One is how I think the workplace of the future may be a bit different, and also maybe the kind of job roles and the skill set that we may be looking at will also be a bit different. From the workplace angle, I think office-wise, we have totally transited from a physical workplace environment to a totally remote environment. And going forward, I think different companies are experimenting with different approaches. At one hand of the spectrum, we have companies who are saying that they're going to stay 100% remote, right? They are just going to work on a totally virtual basis. There are some who are saying that they are going to return back to the old way of working. And then, of course, there are some of them who are on the middle ground approach. So I did a bit of critical thinking as to why the office exists, and also did some research. I think offices was first set up, I think, to achieve three main objectives. Really, one is that I think long time ago is only because the resources that the work needs to be done can only be found at a certain location. So it makes sense for everybody to group around there so that they can perform their work. I think there's another element about the productivity and performance monitoring. So you want everybody to come back to a workplace so that you can make sure that they are actually at work, right? And also maybe having all of them together, you get some synergy in terms of the productivity that you can drive out. I think the last part is on the collaboration piece. Having people come together versus them being in separate locations. It helps to enhance collaboration, and that's what essentially the essence of teamwork and the basis of most companies. And if I were to look at what the technology has enabled us to do, I think the first part on the resourcing, we have definitely solved that, right? Most of us will have a laptop being able to operate from home and access most of the information or data that we need. I think the second part on the productivity performance, that's arguable. Some are doing it better than others. I would say that I think there are some tasks that are probably better performed in a physical work environment together as a team, whereas there are some that I think is totally okay that doesn't impinge the productivity if they are working separately. I think the last bit is the one that really suffers, the thing about collaboration and the relationship building. So in a virtual environment, I think to some extent, the building of the ties and the bonds and the company culture does suffer a bit. So if I were to think about future, where there could be that potential, right, is whether or not technology would come to a point where we are able to close this gap altogether. So when we are talking on this Zoom call, I always have this problem about eye contact. You know, like in conversations, eye contact is very important, but I find it very difficult. I always don't know where to look in a virtual environment. But I'm really hoping that maybe in a virtual space, Facebook is coming out with a metaverse, etc. We are able to create virtual avatars of each other. So even in separate location, we are able to recreate that conversation and that personal human touch. I think that would be pretty cool and amazing. And I think that will solve the last part of a really truly virtual office environment. Yeah. So on the skill set, etc., I think Alvin covered a lot of it on the hard skills about HR, etc., being digitally competent, looking at data analytics, etc. I think those are very important skills. I thought maybe to touch a bit more on the soft skills that I think is going to come to the fore. And I think first and foremost is this thing about authenticity. I think that it's harder to convey authenticity when we are all working apart. And again, that links back to the first part about me saying about building bonds and collaboration. So I think leaders going forward needs to make a deliberate effort to be a lot more authentic and to engage, to have the level of empathy and care for their employees and to demonstrate it in various ways, right? I think the other parts that I feel are important are these things about accountability and delegation. In this new environment, definitely we need leaders and managers who are able to delegate effectively and still yet be confident that their teams will deliver on the results. And I think the last part, a few of us have mentioned it already, is the ability to manage diversity. So I think diversity, we understand it to mean like races, nationality, etc. But I think beyond that is the diversity in understanding the different personal circumstances and work environment that every employee may be experiencing. And this becomes a lot more important because actually their individual circumstances right now would have a direct impact on their own work performance as well as productivity. So that becomes an element that you can no longer ignore going forward as a leader. So I thought these are my thoughts as I think the skill sets as well as the workplace environment of the future. Yeah.
That's great. That's a very detailed look of the future, Wing Git. So I really like your comment about eye contact, and that technology, because it used to be when I would do my interviews, it has to be face to face, and for me, I have this funny feeling that I test someone's honesty when I look them in the eye, and then I judge. I think this person's honest. It's never happened in a Zoom call, right? But yeah, that's great feedback. So I wanna ask the same question to Ming Teck. Ming Teck, if you had a crystal ball, how would the new world of work look like in your opinion from an HR tech standpoint?
Yeah, so I think your question is really two parts. Number one, what's the future of work, and number two, what's the role of HR tech in that future of work? So, the future of work, according to our research, talking to executives, is something that probably 2/3, maybe over 2/3 of our clients have started to think about, and they're at the start of the journey. So it's about intentionally thinking about what the future of work looks like. So I think that crystal ball would show that people are shaping it, and what we find is that leaders are actually taking quite an intentional and a holistic approach to designing, if you like, the future of work. So, if there are 4 areas where I think that, or 4 scenes, if you like, where, we can see images in the crystal ball, it would be around how we work, how we lead, how we organize, and actually what we need in terms of our environments. Now, in terms of how we work, I think we're going to have very different customer relationships. I think we will have employee work models, which are quite different. And here, HR Tech has a role to play, to work with a much more diverse, asynchronous type of work model that employees are going to have. And I think also in terms of how we work, we're going to actually emphasize a lot around productivity, kind of giving time back to people, because these new types of work environments actually can be quite tiring. Everyone talks about Zoom fatigue. So there will be tech and tools that actually helps give time back to people. In terms of how we lead, which I think is an equally important part of kind of HR tech and the future of work, leadership needs to be much more empowered. We mentioned words authenticity, empathy. Leaders will need to be trained clearly for kind of a different type of management, and tech can help there. But I think that is towards, if you like, in terms of leadership, the sense of building a cohesive culture. And this will be probably a mix of both online and offline kind of interactions supported by tech to carry things, from, I guess, physical interactions into the virtual world and vice versa, to make people actually feel connected and rebuild that sense of connectivity that we had pre-pandemic. I would say that also how we organize is quite important. So the ways of working, actually, tech in general will have a lot of, and this is in the broader definition of HR tech, will have a big role to play, when we're working much more agile, iterative, virtual, all of those tools that we're using right now will need to continue to be there. But on top of that, you can layer on, the AIs that are telling you, are these meetings effective? Do you have the right number of people? So these types of models might give us actually better information as to as to improving and iterating in terms of how we work and making ourselves essentially more adaptive. In terms of how we organize, I would also say that they are probably going to get new talent models linked to the fact that nowadays people can help companies anywhere, right? So that talent journey, I talked about recruiting, but it's not just about recruiting full-time employees. It could be much more project-based. It could be much more flexible or ad hoc talent that you're bringing in, and clearly HR tech has a big role to play here. Now, the last thing in terms of the dimension, kind of what we need, there's something around the environment, the spaces that we are working in, how it's designed, how it's set up, a much more human-centric workplace. I think people would demand that to come back to the office. It needs to also be safe. It also needs to be smart, given that we are now probably interacting with people in very different ways. So that's a combination of design and tech that has to be put and set up in the right way, both in an office, at home, in order to actually allow employees to thrive in the future of work. So, hopefully that paints, if you like, a few pictures in your crystal ball. It's a very dynamic topic, the future of work, and I think it's in our hands to shape it.
Oh, thank you. That's again great insights, Ming Teck. And I think, funny enough, I think the future as we see it is actually happening right now, right? So, and I think the basics of human nature, like being authentic, being a great leader, listening to your employees, those things will never go away, no matter how advanced technology becomes. But yeah, this has been a very good, insightful discussion. And yeah, hopefully the panel have enjoyed it as much as I did. So that being said, I want to hand it over now back to Yasmin to close this off. Thank you, Yasmin. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Juancho. Thank you once again to all our panelists for such an engaging discussion. And thank you, Juancho, for facilitating the discussion so well. There was so much to learn about what the future of work would look like, especially as we continue working in a hybrid work environment, how tech will transform work in the workplace, the role employee experience will play in it, the role data will play in it, how the role of CHR is evolving. In fact, as very rightly all of you put together, how we work, the way the workplaces look like, how we envision the future for our workforces is going to be different. And as you rightly said, indeed, the future of work is already happening now. So thank you once again. With that, we conclude today's session. And thank you everyone for joining us. We will now move on to our networking break. Have fun networking and learning from each other. See you on the other side, everyone. And thank you once again to all our panelists for joining us today.
Okay, thank you.